Well, we're a little late to the party this month for a number of reasons. Farris is growing up and taking his steps deeply into manhood with his program at a very Tony college, where he's getting his master's degree in real estate, and it's a really exciting time for him. So he's really busy. Plus, Ferris, congratulations, you have another child on the way.
Yeah, another child on the way, and it's actually going to coincide with next month's Astro Dads, such that I'll have another representation of that particular astrological sign. So Leo baby incoming, and it'll be our third, and it'll be a daughter. So yeah, it'll be a lot of fun.
Cool, that's excellent. Congratulations, and we all hope that everything just goes sweetly and smoothly, and it's a nice landing. Have you come up with a
Thank you.
name yet? Have you got the name thing?
We have we're not going to reveal a name until the baby joins us, but my wife and I historically, for every single child that we've had so far, have had a heck of a time coming up with a name. And we'll start out with like a list of names that we each really like, and they never seem to blip or pop on the other person's radar super hard. And so it's a very rigorous vetting process
So
when
you
it
got
comes
you
to naming
guys
our
you guys are
kids.
kind of you have to kind of like dial it in the name.
Yeah, yeah. Make concessions in this, and I think we've landed on a name that everybody's excited about. So yeah,
Cool, cool.
yeah.
There are names for both boys and girls that seem to be um what's the word I'm looking for? They seem to be trendy. Like there will be
Hmm.
certain names that will trend.
Yeah,
Um, I know for girls for a long time, Hannah was a big name,
hmm,
right? That was a really big name.
yeah. And I mean, when you visit the naming sites, you can kind of get like the most popular names of given years,
Right.
and watching them change, is really fascinating. A little bit cringe when you see some of those names like coincide with characters in popular TV shows and stuff. But yeah, I definitely think, to our credit, at least something that I'm proud of is that our names have never been near the top of the popularity list, and they've never coincided with like any pop cultural, references or celebrities or anything like that. They're purely unique to the individual. So
So just a little aside and little anecdotal tale about names. Um, some people may or may not be aware of this, but um, I got married in Las Vegas, and I knew the woman that I would marry, the mother of my son. I knew her for like 2.5, maybe 3 weeks, right?
it's
It was just one of those things where it was like a snowball rolling down the hill, and there was
yeah.
just so much momentum happening. It was like, okay, to the point where we're sitting around the 21 table, and the dealer says, if you haven't married this woman, you should. Right? It's like a setup, right? We're at Binion's. And then I remember going to the bar at Binion's. And so we started to actually talk about this. We're starting to take this thing seriously, right? We're three weeks in, we're in Vegas, and we're going off the 21 dealers kind of vibe, right? So she asked me,
uh,
well, if you were to name uh, a baby, male baby, what would you name the baby? And I don't know why the hell I thought of this name, but I said Finn, and I don't know why. Right. And she said,
yeah,
I've always wanted to name my son Finn. Right. I'm like, wow. Okay. Now this is
yeah,
really
yeah,
happening. Right. It's
yeah.
getting real. So we wind up getting married, and eventually, of course, she gets pregnant. And we thought Finn is the word, right? Like we settled that a long time
Hmm.
ago. But I wasn't really like settled on it. So I started to play
Yeah.
with different names. And one day we're at the beach in like Encinitas, I think. And I said, what about Griffin? What about Griffin? Like it's got Finn in it, but it sounds kind of
Hmm.
cooler.
Hmm.
So she's like, yeah, I like it. Right. And then that was it. Like we just went from Finn to Griffin. which I actually think is a better name.
Yeah, I agree.
And then the story goes like when he was in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, he had a friend named Finn, right? And I didn't like him. Like, how do you not like a 7-year-old kid? I didn't like the kid,
Yeah.
right? And at that moment, I was
Oh,
like,
that's
I'm really glad I didn't name you Finn, right? Because
Robert. That is I'm sorry. There might have been a time where I'd be like, yeah, how could you not like a 7-year-old kid? It's the real thing. Okay, that happens.
let's talk
You
about that as
see.
dads. Let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Well, from my perspective, it's oftentimes just more like a reflection of their parents. That's kind of been my experience. But kids are, you know, my wife has had experiences with some kids that have, like, one of the kids that was on my son's baseball team, for example. Like, we live in a pretty small community, so you'll like run into some people at parks and pools and different things that you're trying to do. And this one kid in particular who's just kind of always got a dirty face. You know what I mean? He's like always kind of unkempt and never
He's
really,
like the pig pen.
like,
He's the pig pen of your community.
yes,
Right. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
And when our kids are kind of, I and I we my wife and I hypothesize that because we give our kids sufficient amount of attention, that they don't seek it from like other adults, really. Like, they kind of like to go play with other kids, and but this kid, just, my wife is at the park with her friend, and they were kind of, they took their kids to, our kids and her kids to the park, and he's just like constantly trying to get their attention, while they're just trying to have a conversation, and just like really loud and obnoxious about it. And kind of just, I don't know, I might be sounding kind of mean right now, but I mean, that's just one example where there's another kid where, you know, um, my daughter did a STEAM project, science, technology. It's STEM, but basically they add the A for art, so STEAM. And she won third place for the entire county of Nevada County, right? And all three of the kids that won the top three were at her school. And the two projects that beat hers out, I mean, hers was easily the best. And obviously, I'm her dad, and I'm saying that because I'm her dad. But it was like those like glowworm caves in like New Zealand where they kind of like have that blue fluorescent color. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Anyways, it was a combination of like art, and it had like lights in there, so it had a little bit of technology, and it had
So you're hitting all the
science, and it was
bases.
like, right, covering all the bases.
Right.
And it was the only one that even came close to that. And like, the kid that got in first place was in her class, and her parents like kind of are always like politicking with the principals and the teachers, and
Mm.
always doing that kind of thing. And it just, and the kid is so unimpressive in all the other ways that you encounter that person. It's just like that. It made me kind of annoyed at the kid. Like whatever. I'm not necessarily proud to admit it, but I was just like, oh, what's going on here, man? It was
Right.
like a hard lesson. Trying to teach my daughter, it's like, what, you clearly have the best one. There's no real debate about that. And sometimes the best doesn't always win, and that's unfortunate truth
That
about
is
the
a
world we live
tough
in.
lesson to learn. And your daughter's a Cancer too.
Yep.
So she's sensitive, right? Like, that's parenting.
Yeah.
That's parenting.
Yep.
Um, God, I have a lot to say about this, actually. Um, were you the type of kid that other parents really liked, right? Were like,
Yeah. I think
yeah,
largely, yes.
yeah,
There was a stage where maybe I wasn't the best influence on other kids, where that might not have been the case, but by and large, all when I was acting right, yes, 100%. And frankly, I have a pretty strong Saturn in my chart, and I think I kind of trend more toward, like, I like to talk to older people, and so I didn't really hesitate to kind of like you know chat it up with the other kids' parents, and talk to them about maybe more adult things, like politics, and things that were just going on in the world and stuff like
right.
that.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I can see you. You'd be the kid. Hey, why don't you invite Ferris over for a play day? Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
see that. I was not that kid. I was the kid.
Yeah.
Don't play with that Morris boy. He's trouble. So,
Yeah.
but I think this is a really important thing to talk about because we're talking about cancer, right? And we're talking about protecting our children. Like it's a
Yeah.
father's role and it's a mother's role, right? We don't want to be helicopter parents, but on the other hand, kind of figuring out like the influences
Yeah.
in your child's life, and not just kind of going along and say, oh well, we
Yeah.
don't want to upset the crowd here and not invite Timmy over, even though Timmy tried to burn down his mother's house,
Yeah.
right? Like these are really important things that parents need to notice. And I have a
100%.
little story about it, and then and it kind of we'll transition to what it's like to literally raise a cancer child, which is a
Yeah.
very interesting navigation. Um, so my son used to go to this school when he was like preschool, kindergarten, right? And there was this girl there that he went to school there with, same age, right? She's kind of a tomboy, and her father he was kind of a hipster. Like he wasn't a bad guy. I kind of liked the dad. He
Mhm.
was a hipster. He was a DJ. I think he conceived his daughter at Burning Man, which is a whole other kind of story unto itself, right? But like she would hit people every now and then. And one time we were out on this lake in Berkeley, and we're like on this raft, and my kid's on the raft, and she's on the raft, and we're just kind of splashing around, not having a really turgid go of it. And she balls up and takes her fist and hits him in the face. I'm like, whoa, right? And I said, okay, we got to get out of here, right?
Yeah.
So we leave, and I pulled this father aside, and I said, dude, you got to get your girl under control. I said, because what you do now is going to be responsible for how she's going to treat men moving forward. Right? She's hit my kid twice in the face. He hasn't done anything to deserve it. And if you don't do something about it now, you're going to create problems down the line, relationship wise, for her and other people. And he
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
understand that, right? He didn't understand it. He thought I was being critical and judgmental. Yeah, I was. Sorry, I was. So that was my I've got Mars and Cancer. So
Yeah.
that was my Cancer coming out. Like, not only do you not get to hang out with me and my kid anymore,
Yeah.
that ship
Yeah.
has sailed. But dude,
Yeah.
get your girl under control. So
Well,
she's going to be a menace to society.
and I mean, I've thought about this before, but like how much we're shaped by, our own experiences and like our own how our parents were, and the milieu, the backdrop of like our upbringing and everything like that. And it's very easy to just extrapolate from that like how the world is, and like you have assumptions, and sometimes like having a penetrating sort of message come in like that, it's I've always, whenever they happen, and they don't happen super often, thankfully, I mean, whatever, but they're good calibration moments, opportunities, right? And like it's a shame that he just kind of interpreted it as like an attack. It's kind of almost like he had a victim consciousness about it rather than like a reflection. And like what does this mean? Like why would somebody feel the need to come express this to me about my kid? And oh, by the way, it's not that if anybody comes to me and tries to correct something that my kid did, that I'm automatically just going to be receptive to it. Like I'm going to evaluate, like maybe you're wrong, like whatever. But in this moment, if your kid did something wrong, like take the opportunity to evaluate like what that potentially means for the future. It's 100%. I think, and I would have no problem, talking to a parent in a similar fashion if if my kids were being impacted by their kids like recklessness or just behavioral, disruptive behavior or whatever.
I think a lot of people are not used to or capable of processing honest feedback in communication.
Yeah.
They're just, most people can't deal at that level, right? They, to your point, they think of it as an attack. They take it personally, and maybe I could have said, "Hey man, do you want some feedback on raising your daughter?" And he may have said, "Oh, maybe," or "No," or whatever. But I was kind of hot, right?
Yeah.
Because it had happened on more than one occasion. And again, right? I was thinking long term downstream, that your girl is going to be responsible for her
Yeah.
relationship with men moving forward. And so
Well,
I was very
and
protective of my son.
I mean, based on your, sort of the high level description of him, kind of a hipster Burning Man type, um, sounds like he was a really passive guy who, is modeling how women treat, regardless of what correction he may or may not have like implemented on his daughter in that moment. It sounds, I've known people who are similar to him who kind of just go through their entire life being a model of like allowing women and other people to mistreat them, right? So it's almost like he probably gets walked on. I don't know. That's just kind of my superficial interpretation of it.
So here's what I think. He had, again, we can move on from this.
Yeah.
I think he had an investment in being cool, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And like being cool was his brand. And he was kind of a cool guy. He was a DJ, he was tall, he dressed
Yeah.
like a hipster, played basketball. I mean, I actually liked the guy, right?
Yeah.
So when you have a conversation like that, that is not cool, right? That is
Yeah.
not a cool, like, you're not talking
It's
about
off
like,
brand for him.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
talking about like some 70s funk band or something, right? You're talking about
Right.
like
Right.
parenting. So
Yeah.
as a father, it kind of embracing this Cancerian model, right? Like for me, that's always been my kind of territory for my kid.
Hmm.
But also nurturing. Like Cancer is very
Yeah.
nurturing, and I always did my best to invest in things that would nurture him.
Hmm.
Um, and so I used to like expose him to all these different types of foods, right?
Hmm.
So we lived in the Bay Area. I was a foodie, so he got to experience all these different types of foods, all these different types of music, right? So that was my way of nurturing him and
Hmm.
giving him, kind of spiritual and aesthetic and, cultural mana, right? Um, what about you? Now you have two and you have another on the way. What are some of the things that you have done to, again, from the Cancerian model, right? What you've
Yeah.
been doing
Yeah.
to nurture your children's growth.
Well, for one, I would say, cancers are very very relationship based,
Now you're
right?
talking about your
They need,
daughter specifically,
yeah,
though, right?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Well, yeah, for sure. And I would say that, from our perspective, it's almost like having our firstborn be a Cancer was like the perfect template for us as parents, because we were very like, we like to really pour into her and like forge incredibly deep bonds, and there's a reciprocity there, and so we get to kind of feed off of each other, and
Which is a very
to the extent.
Cancerian thing, right? With
Yeah.
yeah, the yin and the yang. They're in this reciprocal circle of life.
100%. And I think, you know just trying my best to take a step back. In my opinion, I think, us like reinforcing in her that like we are your root, we are your like, we are a home base that you can always come back to. You can, have honest conversations with us and all these types of things. has empowered her, given her the confidence to kind of go out into the world and, establish her own identity and, things like that. And, she's fortunate in the sense that there's a very strong family unit backing her, not just like her nuclear family, but she's got grandparents and cousins. And, it's like a very strong family identity that she gets to stand on and kind of like, experience the world from that with that confidence, right? Because I think conversely, right, cancers who don't have a super strong sense of like that home, base, can really probably feel emotionally unnerved, and maybe just not really have a good sense of how to navigate the world with that confidence.
Yep.
So, so I would say that that's one way for us. It's just we like spending time with our kids, right? They are, it's not like we have to. It's not like a chore that we have to, do that, right? Like we enjoy it. And like for example, our kids just did a thing for us last night, okay, where they went over to Nani and Pop Pop's house and they were treating us to like a restaurant style dinner, right? So mom and dad came over and they got
What
to
did you
act
did you
like
say Nandy and Pop Pop?
Nani and Pop Pop. Yeah. So grandma
Right.
and grandpa basically.
That
And
that 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 was that was the name I called my grandparents.
oh yeah. Oh,
Nanny
cool.
and Pop Pop.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good one,
Yeah.
it's a good one. So they got to kind of like wait on us as if they were, like a server and a waitress and, all this kind of,
Oh,
can I,
cool.
refill your glass? And, they just, they stepped into character and they had so much fun with it. And, it just that, like role playing, and like not being afraid to like, do the dress up and do the, play the games that they're trying to play and stuff like that. And that's certainly been, I think the things that have helped forge like a super strong bond between us and our our cancer daughter. So
So how old is she now?
she just turned 8. So like
Just turned 8.
she's
So
July 6th is
yeah,
her
so she's
birthday.
going
So
through that Saturn for the first Saturn square, right?
yeah.
Where socialization starts to kick in. How is she dealing with that aspect of her life, and particularly with girls, right?
Yeah.
Like girls start to get real clicky, starts at a really young age. Young cancer girl could find that to
Yeah.
be a very sensitive situation. So
You
what's
know,
that like?
you're touching on a very real thing. So one, she's super like friendly and open. She's got a little bit of a tomboy streak to her. I mean, much more interested in like kind of sports and dressing comfortably and not, not like dressing up. And she's not like a super, girly girl, so to speak. But that click nature, we hear a lot about the politics of her classmates and stuff, right? We hear a lot
Really?
about how,
Really?
yeah. She not in a sense of more in a sense of like how it's impacting her, right? Like where she fits in and what this person said about, her, or this person was kind of mean to me today. And like just the other day, that same person was nice or whatever. And, another way that we kind of, we respond to that is we definitely do the, don't worry about it. Kids can act mean sometimes and blah, blah, blah. We'll do that. And then sometimes it's like, you know what, the next time this person says that to you, we try to equip her with like a little bit of a you know, things that are appropriate for the age, by the way. We're not like, we're not telling her to bring a gun to a knife fight or whatever, but like we're kind of equipping her with like comebacks and responses where, because she's just a very kind-hearted person, right? So she operates from a very authentic place and she doesn't really understand kind of like intersocial politics. um she just like is just looking to make friends and be nice and hang out and do that. And when she gets reactions and responses and inputs like that, she doesn't always know how to like it hurts her more than she has like a fighting
Like
disposition,
so
right?
you're instructing her with how to deal with things socially. Like
Yeah.
you're helping her, like you're for lack of a better term, you're arming her with
Yeah.
either things to say or ways to look at the situation or comebacks for
Yeah.
like future conflicts.
Yep.
And that concept to her is jarring,
It is. But like, so
which is very
we try to do it.
Cancerian, by the way.
Yeah. 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 We try to do a defensive and an offensive, right? So we'll say, like, defensively, you're gonna encounter people like this for the rest of your life, who are gonna just have an edge towards you for no reason that you can even understand, and it's more about them than it is about you, and just water off a duck's back, and so we try and equip her with the defensive mechanisms of, like, dealing with that. But also, like, there was an example of one of her a classmate, but like somebody who was a grade older than her. She was playing with one of her mutual friends, right? So she went up to go play with her friend, and this older girl was like, what are you doing here? Go away, right? And she was just kind of like, and then like went away. And then when she told us about it, we're like, the next time that girl says that to you, you'd be like, you know what? You can go away. I'm here playing with my friend, and if you want to play with us, you're more than welcome. And if you don't want to play with us, then you can go away. Like, and just like giving her the confidence to be able to, like, you don't say that to me. You don't have grounds to say that to me. I didn't do anything to you. And like, like just kind of putting your foot down, right? And not coming at it from like a trashy, or it's not like we're trying to equip her with some like inordinate level of like sass and like self entitlement or whatever. But it's like, when to just like let it roll off your back, and when, and oh, by the way, like, she was basically like looking for an opportunity to say that, and it never came, right? So she's like,
Yeah,
that,
that's the one
yeah,
thing, right? Like once you encounter the thing and you sort of like have a strategy for the future
yeah,
event, it's like it's kind of over, right?
yeah,
But I think so. You bring up a really interesting point. And by the way, I congratulate you for not telling her to say, yo, step off, bitch. That was really good
yeah.
on your part, right?
I was like borderline, like, my wife's like, let's do it more like this. I was like,
Right. No,
okay.
that's good parenting. But you bring up a really good point because that's the establishment of hierarchies. And
Hmm.
that's what happens with children, right? And so the older girl is establishing a hierarchy with your
Yeah.
daughter, and Cancer as a sign is at the bottom of the chart, right?
Yeah.
It's the fourth house. So, like, is Cancer like kind of at the bottom of the hierarchy? If Capricorn is at the top,
Yeah.
I would say the answer is no, but because cancers are so sensitive, right?
Hmm.
That, and I do think kids operate this way because kids can be so predatory, right?
Yeah.
That they could sense that, oh, I could get this in on this girl,
Hmm.
right? And it's kind of like, because being a Cancer would be being emotional and kind of open, or
Yeah.
maybe like a crab without a shell. And kids have this psychic antenna, man, and they're
Hmm.
very good at like sussing things out very quickly. Oh, I can step on her,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
she may not say, well, she's a Cancer, and I can
Yeah.
step on her, but that Cancerian kind of openness and
Yeah.
being kind of
Yeah.
emotionally available, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, well, here's what happens in life, right?
Yeah. 100%. And I would agree, not with your reluctance to say, like, are they at the bottom of the hierarchy, but they definitely have more impulse to deference, right? And just to kind of acknowledging, like, other people's place in where they're at and where they're coming from, and they have more, I think, empathy in that sense, where it's like, oh, well, I don't know where this person's coming from, so maybe they're right, or like that type of thing. So yeah, just trying to like coach her and give her guidance on, like, when those type of flex moves are have no place, like you get to push back on these types of things, and here's how you do it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it's you're not only dealing with this idea that, and boys do it too, but they do it a little bit differently, right?
Hmm.
Like boys will do it athletically. And,
Hmm.
if you're out on the field, there's a natural hierarchy that's kind of established if you're good at
Yep.
something.
Yep. Yep.
Girls do it differently because they're not always doing like what the boys do at recess or whatever.
Yeah.
Some do. Maybe your daughter does,
Yeah.
tomboy.
Yeah.
So, and again, given the fact that she is a Cancer, right? Like, this is a really powerful lesson early in life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, frankly, we live in a small enough community to where like I think the lessons are being learned, but without the stakes being so high, because, some of those bigger schools have, I feel like, you just have more population of kids to like that can be bullies, and the different, the extremity of the bullying and all that stuff is, I think, a lot higher. And
Right.
so, we're by and large in a good environment for her to kind of suss out these, encounters, and like feel them and experience them and grow and learn from them. So
Right. Right. Sort of a test,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
like a kind of a I wouldn't say a laboratory, but clearly a place where there is sort of these limited inputs, right? Where
Yes,
she can sort
100%.
of, yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
you and I, before we started to record, and I'll carry the backpack on this one. Right.
Yeah.
Um, Before we started to record, we talked about this bill that just got passed through, shoved through in California, where teachers um, don't have to like say that your kid is going through a transgender.
Quick correction. Quick. Yeah. So it was the case previously that teachers didn't have to,
Didn't
but
have
now
to.
the new legislations make it, you're not allowed to, right? So if you live in a
Oh,
school
that's
district
a
or
very
a,
big difference, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like even if they want to, they can't.
yes,
Wow. Wow.
yeah. So I mean, um, I was talking to somebody who's kind of, in this world a little bit, about it, and they're actually like training to become a teacher. And I asked, so what is your thought on this? And they're like, well, I'll be honest, like as a teacher, I feel a bit relieved at not having to be in the middle of like a family, situation and da da da. And I was like, okay, what about as a parent? And they're like, see, as a parent, that would really tick me off. And so, um, I think, I was getting to a point. I expressed this to you, that I was thinking that maybe California might be primed for a comeback. I thought maybe, just maybe, the piss poor management of the state would, hit a bottom that would have a bit of a rebound, in a more positive direction. And that the passing of that bill really kind of, put a damper on that expectation, to be sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like doubling down, and
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
yeah, not in a good way. I mean, I remember living in California circa 2009, 2010. And I started to get real antsy about what was happening. Um, they had the gay marriage bill, right,
Hmm.
which was defeated at the polls, and then they ran it by that circuit judge, who on the record, right, he's gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but he's a libertarian. That makes it okay.
Yeah.
He's not a Democrat. He's a libertarian, and so he overrules this thing that the people voted on. And I'm like, And I was already kind of on the edge with the state.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
This is total bullshit. And so I started to get a little antsy. And and it just so happened, we wound up moving to Texas. I mean, it just happened and coincided with my antsiness. And it was right before Richard Pan came on the scene and, basically said, there's no more religious or philosophical exemptions for your child to get vaccinated, right? Like we had done that. And so we had left, and then that happened. It was almost like, driving out of like a weird aggressive battle scene, and everything
Yeah.
blows up in the distance behind you. You're like, shit, I'm glad we're not
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
anymore. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but as a father, I was aware of what was happening, right? I was totally aware of what was happening, and I was not cool with it. And I remember there was this situation where uh, the Southern Poverty Law Center. Do you know those guys? So the
Yeah.
Southern Poverty Law Center would go and hang out in Berkeley, um, down by this area where they had all these like cool shops and stuff, like, and they would hang out there with their red vests, and they would hit these women up, right? And they would hit them up to get them to contribute to the SPLC. So the SPLC could pass these like anti-bullying kinds of measures and, stuff like that,
Yeah.
right? And I'm like, this is bullshit, right? I'm thinking this is I know exactly what you're doing here.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're doing. You're essentially creating like this false authority for kids to
Yeah.
like obey and agree to, right? And it's like I'm not down with this. I'm not down with this. So one day I was down there, and the guy's like with his little red vest, and he's getting ready to get this. It's always women, right? So I'm sorry, but it's always women, and he's getting ready to get this monthly contribution from this woman. And I just butted in. I said, what would really help bullying? What? I said, teaching your kids martial arts
Mm.
and self defense. That would really solve a lot of problems, right?
Not what they wanted to hear.
Oh my God, you should see them like, get out of here, right? And I was like, no. There's something, there's something about that process that, and I'm sorry, your daughter is starting to go through it, right? She's starting to kind of hit that edge.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and if you like hit that edge and you hit it in a way where you have to really confront somebody else trying to exert their will upon you, and then you having to deal with that, it's at a certain point it's going to happen, right? It builds a type of psychic immunity.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And then if you
Um,
take that
there,
away, even as painful as it sounds, right? If you take that away, you create less able individuals.
yes, 100%. I not to be too tangential here, and feel free to rein it back in once I make this quick point, but I was listening to the Patrick Bet David podcast actually earlier today, and his guest was Neil Howe, one of the co-authors of The Fourth Turning. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like The Fourth
Oh yeah,
Turning.
totally. Yeah, I have a hard copy
Six.
version of it.
Yeah, me too. And I actually bought copies to give away to people. I'm a very strong, proponent of that view of history. But one of the things that Neil Howe was saying is, and he was talking about on a macro scale. It was William James, the I think philosopher or sociologist. I forget exactly what his title was, but in like 1906 or something like that, he was at Stanford or UC Berkeley giving a speech, and he's like, "How many people here wish that the Civil War never happened?" And he, didn't really give too much time for people to like raise their hand or whatever. And he's like, um, the answer is probably none of you. because of like we're an industrial juggernaut now. Like look at all the positive things that we have on the other side of that conflict. But how many of you would want another civil war in the next 10 years? Like none of you, right? So and he went on to sort of microscope that down. Like whenever I talk to people, it's like who went through, a really hard life moment, a hard divorce, a loss, or whatever. It's like, would you want to change that? And it's almost invariably no, I wouldn't want to change that. Would you want another one? No, I wouldn't want another one. Right.
Right,
So it's
right,
like
right, right, right.
these are those moments where it's like, yeah, you never really want to, you're never like looking for that, but every time you encounter it and you like manage the situation, you emerge better, stronger, more fortified as a result of it. 100%.
Yeah. And that gets back to, like, again, at age 7, age 8, right? That is the first Saturn square in a child's chart. And so
Yeah.
that is when they're going through some degree of socialization,
Yeah.
right? And they're either having to deal with authority or their own inner authority. They're hitting like hard limits, right? And for a lot of kids, it can be a real shock when that happens. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. William James, brother Henry James, by the way, uh,
Okay.
and William James has the textbook definition of a mystical experience. So,
Okay.
right, there's like a whole list of things that if you've experienced those things, you've had a mystical experience. So,
Was he the Numina phenomena guy? Is that am I
I
misplacing
think he
that?
is. Yeah, I think he is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Anyways, yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I love the modern mystics, man. I mean, I've been recently falling asleep listening to Carl Jung when I can't sleep. So, you know, good stuff.
Yeah,
Anyways.
Young. I I found this out when I did the Star of the Day of Hermann Hesse, and
Mm.
Hermann Hesse was a patient of Jung's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you learn something new every day, right? And
Yeah.
like all of his great works follow his um therapeutic work with Carl Jung. He writes Siddhartha after his time with Jung, which is really, I think, pretty remarkable. Um,
Siddhartha is one of those pivotal books for me. I read that at a very important, at the right time in my life, that gave me some very, very strong perspective. And I think probably just gave me a nice boost of wisdom, at a time that I wouldn't have otherwise had. So anyways, I that's a very pivotal book for me.
so this gets back to the idea of nurturing, right?
Yeah.
And so are there books, are there movies, are there TV shows that you share with your children to like demonstrate a life lesson or to give them something to chew on, right? If so, what are some of those things?
Well, so yes and no. Yes, in the sense like last night we watched Cool Runnings, right?
Oh yeah.
We like to bring kind of movie Never Ending Story and The Labyrinth. Like The Labyrinth is like one of her favorite movies, and I think to it, we like to give her a glimpse of a different time,
Yeah, right.
and so I think in that sense we're kind of sharing our childhood and some of the things that shaped us with her, and helping her have that connect to us in that way. But there isn't anything that's like, you know, this is there's a lesson to be learned from this, and like here's what it is, that type of thing. I will say, even though Disney's totally a part of the evil empire, we get down on Bluey quite a bit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Bluey cartoon.
Oh,
Um,
Bluey.
it's
Yeah,
a
there was a big uh like it wasn't a scandal, but there was this restaurant in Kansas City that
uh-huh,
said Bluey was going to be at the restaurant, and
uh-huh.
all of these people with their kids showed up, right? And they had some guy like go down to the Dollar General store and put on this cheap ass Bluey costume. And everybody was like really disappointed that Bluey is a dog, right? Isn't that what Bluey is?
Yep, yep,
Right.
yep.
Yeah.
They're Australian, a family of Australian shepherds. Yep.
Yeah. So,
So,
good life lesson stuff in Bluey.
oh, I mean, honestly, like surprisingly, yeah. Like, I
Good.
mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot to appreciate about that show. But I think, one, it's just like a family value show. Surprisingly, like they just are very, you know, it's a support network, kind of show. They treat each other with love, and that each other is important, and not subversive messaging in there that I've seen yet in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, we like to inoculate our kids with the type of messaging that because here's the thing, we've already touched on it, but at some point they're going to fly the nest. They're going to go encounter aspects of the world that we you know wouldn't want to be an influence on their young psyche, right? And they're going to encounter it, and they're going to it's like it's not so I kind of carry this like uh philosophical underpinning with me, which is it's not my job to like protect my kids from the world. It's my job to equip them with the skills and tools to navigate the world,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so I think that's how I approach it, right? And so I try to give them a foundation of like, even when questionable things come up, it's not even a matter of like, oh, like turn this off real quick. It's like, okay, so here's the deal. Yes, there are things in the world that are like that. That's not like what we are. There are different people, and here's why we're not like that. And I try to help her wrap her mind around different phenomena that are just like unsavory and things, rather than like block it out. So yeah.
Yeah, that's good, man. I think you've got the right approach. And as a parent, it's a really tricky job, right? With you got all these
Yeah.
influences coming in. If they go over to a kid's house, you never know what they're going to watch at the other kid's house,
Yeah.
right? So at least when you're at home with your kids, you try to be able to give them something, sort of
Yeah.
nutritious to snack on
Yeah.
in that world. I have a funny story about the bad parenting moment around that. God, that's a good parenting moment with Bluey. I got the bad parenting moment. So I had my computer open, and there was a period of time when I was on Facebook, I had a Jeff Bridges Big Lebowski picture of me because I actually
Oh,
looked
that's
like
fun.
the dude when I
Yeah.
was a certain age, right? So my son walks over to the computer and he sees it, and it's him in the supermarket with the cream, and he was insistent that it was me, right? Like he was insistent. And I'm like, no, let me show you. Let me show you that it's not me. So I kind of picked the wrong scene from The Big Lebowski, right? And it's the scene where he goes to see the other Jeff Lebowski, where he
Yeah.
says, "You call me the dude, I'll do to Reno," right? He goes through all that, and I think he's got a few expletives. Like I think I might have played him the carpet scene. Not good,
Yeah.
right? So I didn't think, and so he got it right. Like it's not me. So he goes home to his mom. We're separated. Like goes home to his mom. About 3 hours later, I get a phone call. He had done the dude routine in front of his mom. And she said, "You can either fill your son with positive influences or negative influences. That is your choice. And you are going to be responsible for the child you create." Like, so I was kind of getting that thing back, right?
Yeah.
And it was
Yeah.
like, I don't really think a lot of, but I also didn't know he would memorize the damn thing and,
Yeah. Yeah.
pretend
Yeah.
he was the dude at his mom's place. So
Well,
these kids,
it's a good
man, they will just
example.
pick up on what's in the
That's
environment.
that's what I was just about to say. Like my son in particular has one of the best memories I've ever encountered. He will drop. I mean, like you didn't even think he was listening. He was like in his own little play zone, like just like, and then he'll come back. Hey, I thought you said we were going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like you were listening, like so. Yeah, 100%. But I will say that and maybe I don't know, maybe it's a bad impulse on my part, but I feel like certain movies like that, they might not have the best might not be the most kid friendly per se, but I think it is imbuing them with a certain cultural refinement, you know. So
Yeah, I mean, he look, I was raised in the 60s and the 70s, right? So I saw a lot of stuff I should never have seen, right?
mhm.
Like at the drive-in movies, and
Yeah.
my parents were taking me to pretty racy stuff, right? Like there's this one scene in this Michael Caine movie, Get Carter,
Oh,
where
okay.
where he's talking to this woman on the phone and he's telling her to, touch her breasts and stuff. And I'm watching, going, whoa,
Yeah.
man, I got to remember this one. This is good.
Yeah.
So let's get into some Cancer attributes. Since
Yeah.
we're Cancer is the fourth sign, and I've often thought about this, right? Like just in terms of like hierarchies. Not It's not really hierarchies in some ways, but it sort of is.
Hmm.
Like Cancer is in between Gemini and Leo, right?
Yep.
And Gemini is like, precocious and bright and curious and multi-talented. Gemini will dazzle you with, just how kind of witty and kind of on they are, right? That's Gemini.
Yeah.
On the other side, you have Leo, which is dramatic and talented and big and bold and, demands the spotlight, demands the attention. Then you have Cancer in the middle,
Yeah.
right? And it kind of really typifies in some ways the energy of the middle child, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Leo being the older brother or the older sister, getting that first wave of attention, and Gemini being that younger brother, younger sister, getting and there's Cancer kind of stuck in the middle, right? So in
I
a lot of
really
ways, it
like that.
feels like the
Yeah.
middle child. What do you think about that analogy?
I mean, I think just on a super high level, that's one of the things I really like about astrology is that there's just so many different ways to chop it up and,
Yep.
lens from which to look at it. And that's one I've never heard or even considered before. Couldn't agree more. I definitely think that there's that element to it. And, like they're demure, either like, a little bit more, they mute, they're self censoring or whatever, but they're more muted and more, less inclined towards, and yeah, that's going to happen when you're surrounded by, much more outgoing and energetic and, people who just kind of feel like the spotlight deserves to be on them, versus, so yeah, I think that's a really great way to look at it. Interesting case for us though, it's our Cancer that's the firstborn, and so she actually does have a little bit of that. I need to check out what her rising sign is. I should know. I've looked it up before and I forget, but yeah, I mean, I wonder what other influences she's got, that kind of, but she's not necessarily your super prototypical Cancer, but she definitely is a
Yeah,
Cancer for
she
sure.
sounds
So
like she's kind of versatile. Like she can go off
mhm.
road a little bit, right? Which is
Yeah, yeah.
not real Cancerian. So let's just kind of, for people that are new to this and you just stumbled upon this channel, like what are these guys talking about? Um, so Cancer is the rules the fourth house, which is the home, tradition, familial influence. The United States is a Cancer country. And as much as the sidereal people would like to say it's not, it is. So we have a lot of very traditional things in this country. Fourth of July, barbecue, right? Like it's a country that sort of also looks backwards a lot.
Hmm.
We tend to be nostalgic, and Cancer is a sign that looks backwards,
Hmm.
right? It does. Its motility is not forward moving. It moves to the side or it moves backwards. That's how a crab operates. The element is water, right? And the of course the ruling planet is the moon, and constellation is Cancer, right? It is in the constellation of Cancer, the crab. Um, so again, this hierarchy thing, right? Like it feels like in the home, right? Cancer's at the top,
Yeah.
right? Right, like in the home, sort of mom being Cancer, right? Like she's at the top of the pecking order. Um, in that space. It doesn't mean she can't be in the
Yeah.
top of the in Capricorn, but
Yeah.
if you reverse the hierarchies, right, and the home is considered the apex of the hierarchy, right, that's a whole different conversation. And we've got
That's another great way to put it. And I'll let you finish your thought, but I was going to add something else regarding like the United States and like
go
the
ahead, jump in, and
homeland.
I'll
And
circle back. I remember what I
yeah,
was going to say.
yeah. But I mean, just it's true too. You know, if you think about like the idea of like the homeland and like our the national the defense. You know, I guess it's more of an offensive posture. You know, in recent decades, but it's like you know the defense of the homeland and just that honor fallen soldiers, and there's that whole like sentiment and vibe around our military culture, which is the defenders of the homeland. And you know that's a very Cancerian, you know, sort of energy,
Defender
I
is the
would
key
say.
word, right? That's the key
Mm-hmm.
word because until the Patriot Act and the clear break doctrine, the country was always a defensive country.
Yeah.
Right. It was not about preemptive strikes and this other bullshit. Right. So once they had the Patriot Act, literally it abrogated the Constitution. So
Yeah.
we literally became a different country. But to your point, that's what this country is about defending, theoretically defending, right?
Yeah.
Not going
Yeah.
on the offensive and saying, oh, well, we're going to get into regime change. But this whole idea of hierarchies, um, really is a lot of ways inverted. You know, we've placed so
Yeah.
much emphasis on being in the world and being successful, getting to the top, right? And even women, have been, since the second wave feminism, like, oh, this home thing, Betty Friedan, it's a drag, right? You don't want to do this. You want options, So that whole idea of like the 10th house in Capricorn being at the top of the hierarchy is kind of inverted, right? Like, I mean, there was a time where this idea of the home was really where it was at, right? And there were very strong individuals inside that home. It was the mother and the father. And not every home is healthy, right? I mean, we all have stories about our families, some of which are better, some of which are maybe not so good, right? But I think we've gone overboard, right? Like
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
inverted and now people are talking about homeschooling, right?
Yep.
Like there's people that are homesteading, there are people that are trying to raise their kids naturally. So we're seeing this inversion take place where now
Yeah.
the fourth house is becoming much more important, right? Then oh well, let's put the kids in daycare, right? Or let's get a sitter or whatever. Right now it's like, oh well,
Yeah.
we're going to have to take care of those things ourselves. So I feel like we might be in a different like timeline or that those hierarchies are going to switch. And I
Well,
think they
you
need to.
know,
I think we need to rebalance things so that
well,
this
hundred
idea of
percent.
Cancer in the home is much more on an equal playing field with that 10th house and Capricorn and achievement.
I like that. Well, and if you think about kind of like the gloat or the glut of sort of like corporate America, and it's we're top heavy in
Yeah.
that domain in the United States. And what happens when something gets top heavy? It you know there's a tipping, a recalibration that goes on there. So yeah, that definitely I think we're seeing that for sure. And I mean, even just look in the recent days with all the goings on of like the political like you know upheaval and just chaos that's going on. I feel like people are really retreating more and more that I'm seeing, at least on my algorithmic feeds, are suggesting that people are retreating back more to like a traditional sense of America rather than what I don't know. There it definitely seems like there's a momentum shift towards a more Cancerian vibe. I would say.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And we have, like the Tropic of Cancer, we have the Tropic of Capricorn.
Mm-hmm.
And we have trended towards the Tropic of Capricorn for I don't know, since the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
And now it feels like we're trending more towards the Tropic of Cancer. I mean, you could even make an argument, and not one that I think is a great one, that all of these migrants are coming from the South, right?
Hmm.
Which is much closer to the Tropic of Cancer. So it's literally sort of, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, right? It's like we have to. Like
Yeah.
there's this balancing that's taking place, and some of it may be artificial, but it's happening, right? It's happening.
Yeah.
We can't deny it, and that's a whole other discussion. All right, let's get into some of these
Yeah.
traits.
Yeah.
Um, so these are it's not just child; these are positive traits for Cancer, but we're trying to sort of pinpoint them. The first is intuitive. Cancer is a very intuitive sign. And one of the things that I don't know if you've noticed this about your daughter and get your feedback on it, but cancers are, of all the signs, they're the most somatic, right? They
Mm.
will feel something in their body um, as a physical response to an emotional experience. Has your daughter like expressed that or shown that at all?
You know, I can't put my finger on any examples, to be honest. But I would say that many of the characteristics that you have listed here map onto what we see in her, native temperament and so forth. But that one is not one that I've picked up on personally.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good. I mean, a lot of times the rising sign, because that's how we interact with the world, can mitigate. So the cancers they're intuitive, they're empathic, they're somatic, right? Like
Yeah.
for me, the real, kind of temperature gauge for a Cancer is that they will physically feel something that they are not emotionally into,
Hmm.
right? Like my stomach hurts or um, something's going on. I don't feel right. I'm cranky, right? And it's like, oh, well, maybe it's not a physical thing, it's an emotional thing. Let's talk about the emotional thing. What's really going on,
Uh,
right?
I will say that disappointment in certain things that maybe she encounters have maybe a little bit heavier, not necessarily like something that manifests as an ailment per se, but it takes the wind out of her sails to such a degree as it, kind of stops her in her tracks, right? And it's hard to sometimes snap her out of maybe a
That's a
funk that
total
she was.
Cancerian
Yeah.
thing. When they're in a
Yeah.
mood,
Yeah.
right? When they're in a mood, you have to let them have the mood.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't, it's
Yeah.
like a crab. Like, they're going to go into
Hmm.
their shell and you just have to wait. You have to wait it out. You can't
Yeah.
bribe them out. You can't shame them out. You can't laugh them out. You just have to let them have their experience.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and my son's a Cancer rising. I know a little bit about it, like from his ascendant, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, they're caring, right? I mean, this is what Cancers do. They care, they show care for their brothers, sisters, pets. They're good with pets, really good with pets. Devoted. It's a very devotional sign, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes overly devoted. We'll get into that with negative traits. Being going along with devoted, they're loyal, right? They're loyal to their family. Theoretically, if you play that whole Cancerian kind of relationship out, right, they'd be loyal to the country and loyal to
Yeah.
like the values, loyal to the church. It's just a loyalty that is
Yeah.
inbred, and that's why when that loyalty is broken, it's so hard,
Yeah.
right? It's really,
Yeah.
really hard. Like it's hard to get that trust back with a Cancer. They're domestic. Let me move this out a little bit. They're domestic, meaning that fourth house related, right? Conservative.
Hmm.
Cancers, by and large, a pretty conservative sign, right?
Yeah.
And it's conservative. I would say it's conservative politically, but it's also conservative with resources.
No. Yeah.
Yep.
I,
Family
I,
oriented. Go ahead.
we have our kids on an allowance. They're earning their allowance and stuff, and my daughter is much more inclined towards saving her money and than my son, who's just looking for things to spend it on. So yeah,
Right.
I
Cancers
would
are
say
built
that,
that way.
yeah,
They like to
yeah,
have their resources, right? Um, they're also shrewd.
hmm
They're shrewd, and meaning that, like your daughter could look around and go, oh, there's a side hustle here,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Hey, mom, dad, if I did this around the house, do you think I could make a little extra on the allowance, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
So they're good at that. They're really good at that. They're again kind of conservative, judicious, right? They don't like to necessarily waste things. They have a great memory. It's funny that
hmm
your son, the Capricorn, is the guy with the memory. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
but Cancer has, they've got pretty strong memories, because all the water signs retain, right? They retain,
hmm Yeah, yeah.
right?
That
Theoretically,
makes
water has
sense.
memory, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they're crafty. What I mean by crafty, like arts and crafts, and
Yeah, yeah.
sewing, building, right? There's if even if you have Mercury in Cancer, your child has Mercury in Cancer or Venus in Cancer, like they have that ability to be crafty and make things, right? They're very good at that. Cooking kind of falls in line with that.
hmm hmm
Thrifty, right? So that's the saving part.
Yeah.
The maternal cancers are maternal. They care for things. And we talked
She's
about
the best big
empathic.
sister. She's the best big sister ever, for sure.
And it's
So,
kind of good, right? Like she's first in line.
hmm
So she's kind of, in the family, she's got the hierarchy,
yep,
right? She's
yep.
at the top. Big sister, maternal, like that's a good birth position for a Cancer
Yeah,
girl, totally.
yeah.
You have to deal with a Leo little sister though. Look out.
I know.
That'll be interesting.
Hopefully, she'll have a plenty of opportunity to shape her in her own image, and we'll see how successful she is at that. So,
Right. That'll be interesting.
yeah.
Healing. They're into healing.
Mm-hmm.
Like their personas can be very healing. Like when a Cancer is in balance, when the
Mm-hmm.
yin and the yang is really in balance and you're around a Cancer person, like they have very nice vibes, like very cool, very calm, very healing
Yeah.
vibes. That can translate also into healing abilities. And by and large, it's a natural sign, right? So you said your daughter, kind of doesn't dress up, right? Like, that can be very, very much aligned with Cancer. Like it's just natural. Like
Yeah.
she'll
Yeah.
wear clothes that'll fit and make her feel good and they're comfortable, right? So those are, and the positive expression of natural means there's no artifice, right? There's no artifice. They can be authentic. They can be emotionally accessible. That's natural as well. Some of the negative traits with Cancer, the Cancer child can be moody, and especially as they get closer to adolescence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Inconstant can be sometimes a factor with, because it's a cardinal sign, right? But of all the cardinal signs, it's not the strongest, right? Like the strongest cardinal sign is Aries, and Aries, like you, right? Bang on, right? Capricorn, on the other side, always trying to get to the next level.
Yeah.
Libra, cardinal sign, kind of balancing it all out, the bottom of the chart, the top of the chart, right? Being kind of active and receptive. Cancer, because it's not always on, can be inconstant. So
Mm.
sometimes their effort isn't always there, right?
Yeah.
It's just, and then you have to ask yourself, okay, well, how do we deal with that? You have to wait it out, right? This is a sign that's connected to the moon and cycles. So
Yeah.
that's another
Yeah.
thing. If you have a Cancer child, you should pay attention to the phases of the moon with your Cancer child. It's, a full moon, there's a good chance your Cancer child is going to feel more confident. It's the way it is, right? New moon, they may feel a bit more adventurous but then there's all those other cycles in between, right? And the moon is cyclical. So That's a big part of it. Churlish, they can be churlish. What does churlish mean? They can have a bit of an attitude, fussy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Fussy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to eat that now, right? Or I don't want to eat, right? I'm not hungry. They can also be clingy. Now, this is more problematic as cancer gets older.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that cancer is notorious for is staying in relationships too long, right? They will overstay and it's not good. Like, they want to hold on to that relationship. So a cancer child, right? One of the hardest things that your daughter will learn is not just the hierarchy of the playground, right? It's when one of her friends either moves, which will happen,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? Or she may move based on what I'm hearing from you. And
Yeah.
that can be very um, problematic for a cancer child who has had these friendships and this consistency, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think of all the signs, the cancer child has the hardest time with divorce.
Mm.
Hardest time with
Yeah.
divorce because they feel everything, right? And it's like, where does my loyalty go? Does it go to my father? Does it go to my mother? Like, where does this all go? Right. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if you happen to have a cancer child and your marriage is a little bit rocky, but maybe salvageable for the sake of your cancer child, I would say hang in there
Good
because that
advice. I
cancer
like that.
child's going to
Yeah.
have issues.
Yeah.
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 And then you're going to have more issues. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, how do you feel about this? I'd love to know your opinion. If a marriage is not perfect, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also not a war zone,
Yeah.
and the people in the marriage are mostly compatible, but not always thoroughly satisfied, and they have
Yeah.
kids, you think that they should stay together for the kids?
Yeah. Geez, I feel like in some ways I'm a good person to ask this question because there was definitely a time in my life where I was more like, life is too short to, try and force things that don't work and blah, blah, blah. I'm at a stage now in my life where, like, literally, consciously or unconsciously, every decision I make is for my kids, right? I couldn't imagine being in a separate, like, living arrangement from them. I couldn't, you know what I mean? I couldn't. So I would say that certainly from personal experience, being being there for your kids is the most important thing that a parent can do, right? So
Yep.
I think that's how I would respond. I'd say if it's workable, work it out because you only get one crack at shaping them in the most formidable years, or yeah, for of their lives, and like that's what that's one of the most important things you'll ever do as a parent. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not the best spokesperson for this statement, but I think parents should. They should put
Yeah.
aside whatever. And look, let's be fair. Like, there are sometimes in a relationship in people's lives where it's just not fair, right? For
Yeah.
whatever reason, it's not fair. But does that mean that because it's not, I guess it's all subjective. Like, what is not fair? If it's a minor to medium not fair, you could probably live with it, right? You had these kids, you
Yeah.
created a family, right? Like, you can somehow keep it together, right? If it's like incredibly not fair, that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
But my sense is that we've we've gotten to this place where we give up too easily,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things just like, oh well, we can just give this up and move on, and we don't always do the hard thing, right?
Yeah.
Which is which is stay and work through it. And sometimes it's just not possible. I mean, I'd like to think that maybe in my case, it just wasn't possible
Mhm.
because we were headed in just so vastly different directions.
Yeah.
But I would say if you can work it out for the kids.
Yeah. I think so. I think so. And you know, my parents got divorced. I mean, it's not something that, and frankly, I think that I I think it was probably for the best. You know, hindsight being 2020. Um, that being said, I feel like when you make it easy to quit on stuff like that, you make the big like. I think people's expectations adjust with things, right? So if it's like one of those things, if we had a culture in this country, for example, where it was like not so easy and not so like culturally accepted, and people would vet their partners in a little bit more of an intentional way. And I think that would that meter
I
of
would agree
like
with you.
what you're
That's a great
right.
point. That is a totally great point. Unlike yours truly, who got married in Las Vegas after 3 weeks, right?
Well, I mean, but again, you were a product of a time where like divorce became it was, that's how you were enculturated. And frankly, that's how I was enculturated. I mean, it's I think that's just where we're at now, right? But I think finding way because I lucked out, to be honest. My wife and I, we were friends before, so it's not like we had just kind of met, but we got married quick,
Right.
and I was very pleased with that. And there were times early on in our relationship where it could have gone not a direction that didn't turn out the way that it did, and now we're like we're in it, we're thick as thieves,
You're a
so
team. You
I
got a
think
team, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
I love
yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're building a legacy, right? That's what you're doing.
Mhm.
You're building a legacy, which I think is for men is really important. It's
Yeah, oh
really
yeah.
important for men. And to be fair, like there are people who have gotten divorced and and they've worked it out and they co-parent. So
Hmm.
I don't want to shit on those people, right?
Right.
Because those people, and to their credit, right, they're able to do that. Um, you know, in most cases, if you're having issues inside the marriage, really hardcore issues, invariably they're going to come up in the co-parenting as well,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Which is really hard. But if you can do it, manage it, and everybody's better for it, God bless you,
Yeah,
more power to you.
yeah.
Um, so cancers can be very territorial, right? And it comes to their possessions, it comes to their family. Like there's a good side to it, and there's sometimes not a good side to it,
Yeah.
right? Um, Believe it or not, they can be a little manipulative. They could have a little manipulative side. Um, all the water signs have that tendency to kind of
Hmm.
manipulate, right? So how cancer would manipulate would be getting people to feel sorry for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Oh, I'm so sorry that happened, right? Oh, you're in such a bad mood, right? And it's like that's kind of the worst thing that you could do for a cancer kid is to
Yeah.
reinforce this sense that, oh, can I get you some ice cream? Or, like that they go, oh, look what just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was in a bad mood and boy, look what I got. Right. So it's kind of like I mean, it's the ultimate manifestation of being a victim in some ways.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's the manipulation. They can be very temperamental. Um, again, that gets into the moody territory. They can be a bit selfish at times. Um, like we all the signs have a tendency to be, but when cancer, it's funny. Selfish rhymes with it kind of sounds like shellfish, right? And cancer is a shellfish.
Shellfish. Yeah.
And so
Yeah. That's
it's
well.
like, this is my thing, right? This is mine.
Yeah.
You don't get
And
to
when
play
you
with my toy.
when you're the emotional sign too, like sometimes it can be difficult to see outside of the emotional experience you're having, right? So it all becomes about you, too. So I
Right.
could definitely see that.
Yeah. Now I've gotten in trouble with cancers on this one. There's a fine line between thrifty and cheap,
Yeah.
right?
It's the opposite side of that same coin though, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. Um, Frustrated cancers, if they're frustrated, they're difficult to be around because it builds up emotionally for them, right? So they have to
yeah.
discharge their frustration. And there are ways like it can be done. I really encourage parents with cancer children uh to allow them or your daughter's kind of figured it out. She's a little sporty, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's where the frustration can get worked out, whether it's softball or soccer.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually think like MMA is really good for a cancer, you know?
I mean, we had her in a like a karate Kuksulwan. I don't even know what discipline that is, but we had her doing that. I mean, I would love to get them both in martial arts, and we're not even opposed to it. So I think it's just a lack of initiative at this point. But definitely the sports and like the structure and all that stuff. We love being able to put them in those, but yeah, I think martial arts is fantastic for sure.
And then they can be really passive aggressive. Um, that's just like I think a lot of the water signs can,
Hmm.
but because of cancer, right? Like you're dealing with, the balance of the yin and the yang, right? And passive aggressive kind of gets into that. So my son who's a cancer rising, like I've seen that passive aggressive sort of trait in him.
Yeah,
Like he'll say something under his breath that is like sort of, insulting and cutting, right? And he'll say it in a way that's almost like a question and it's slightly under
yeah.
his breath. And I noticed this when we were in California. I said, "What'd you say?" And I said, "If you have anything to say like that, you better speak up
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you are in passive aggressive territory right now, right? You're trying to insult me, but you're not really being open about your intention."
yeah,
That's what I'm talking
yeah,
about.
yeah,
Cancer rising, right? So,
yeah.
all right, really, we're going a little long here, but let's wrap this up. Occupations, I think kind of classical occupations: nurse, doctor, mother, father, plumbers. Plumbers. It's a very Cancerian trade, right? You're in the home, anything with the home, right?
What's
Midwife,
the
healer.
what's the what's the body part for cancers? Is they have an associated by
Yeah,
like
yeah. It's the
body
kidneys.
kidneys? Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, cancer is the kidneys. Uh, Let me see. Hold on. No, Libra is the kidneys. Cancer is the liver and the spleen.
Okay.
Libra's the kidneys because Libra's all about the two sides of the balance. Cancer's the liver and the spleen. Repairman, cancer men are very handy.
Hmm.
We've talked a lot about cancer women, but cancer men are incredibly handy. They can fix shit, right? And by the way, I think one of the hardest astrological assignments is being a cancer man.
Mm.
Cancer woman, right? Like you can be emotional, you can be moody, you can like it's kind of part of the biology, right? You
Hmm.
slap
Hmm.
that onto a man, it's harder. It's harder.
Yeah, I
Um,
could definitely see that. Yeah.
so repairman, realtor, like cancers make really good realtors. Homesteader, pharmacist, compounding, right? It's not, it's kind of in that healing world.
Hmm.
Um, Naturopath, they're really good with books. Like cancers can be bankers too. Like cancers are
Hmm.
really, really good with money and investments.
Okay.
So accountant, I just used kind of the baseline, but accountant, bookkeeper, anything related to money and investments, go cancer, go. Mechanic, and then psychic. Cancers are really intuitive, right?
Hmm.
So those are just off the top of my head, some of the professions that cancers are good at, they plug into. I mean, I think I left out a few, like, restaurant work, hospitality, those are all in there too,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
But I kind of ran out of space with the graphic. So,
Yeah.
what do you think? Do any of those resonate with you at all?
Oh, I mean, at least well, first of all, I have a relative who is a cancer man who is very handy and, you might say has had, various challenges, that kind of coincide with some of the stuff you touched on. So that part rings very true. And, my daughter is very into like witchy, kind of, like potiony, kind of stuff. So I could
That's very
definitely see her.
Cancerian, man, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
yeah.
I guess I should have put witch on there at the end.
Well, that has depending on how you look at it, a connotation. It's the white witch, the forest witch who
Dude,
does little.
come on now. I mean, there's a tradition of women,
Yeah,
herbalists, right?
yeah, exactly.
Tonics and cures and all those things that go along with that, So ain't nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
not at all.
Yeah.
The healers.
The
So
healers, exactly. The healers.
yeah. No, I
Um,
mean this has been a really fun exploration here, and you kind of through some of your questions and stuff like that got me to dig in and think about things that I haven't even really fully considered, or whatever. So there's a lot of self discovery going on here too. So
well, this has been great, and I really appreciate your input into
thanks, man.
today's show, especially being the father of a cancer child, daughter, oldest child.
Yeah,
So you got a front
yeah,
row seat for it, right?
yeah, yeah. No, I mean the Astro Dads series is a lot of fun, and it gives me a lot of respect for people like yourself who have a daily battle rhythm for generating rich content. Because we're doing this once a month, and it creeps up on me. I'm like, whoa,
Yeah, me
we
too,
got
man. It's so funny because I sent out a text to you like twice last week, and it went to the wrong person. Um, and then I just get caught up in the
yeah,
sort of the whirlwind of the activity. And I'm like, shit, I got to circle back to Farris again. And,
yeah,
we got to do this. We're going to have a quick turnaround. I mean, we're looking at Leo. You're looking at a baby coming
yeah,
in.
yeah.
So when do you have a relative due date here?
I think the 11th or the 10th is the expected due date. So we'll see. All of our kids so far have gone past the due date. Hopefully, that's not the case this time.
Okay. Well, so we should probably think about doing it beforehand versus after because you'll be real busy.
Sure, sure, sure.
So either we'll you know gather again at the end of the month or the
Hmm.
first week of August, and we'll take care of business, and we'll have another one
Sounds
real
good.
soon. So, well,
Awesome.
thanks again,
All right.
Ferris.
Yeah. My
Really
man.
appreciate it.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the show.